For what new media technologies did you use in your research and planning, construction and evaluation? Should we start with research and planning?
In terms of research and planning, the staple choices were obviously YouTube, because that means that I could research ways that bands were being marketed by record labels. I could see their music videos, I could see lots of examples of different music videos. And I could also access different bands' websites using the internet as well, so obviously the internet was a big help. Tumblr was also very useful, as I got audience feedback through Tumblr, as in I'd make a post asking them to look at something that I'd made, not a final cut but say a second edition, and ask for responses, which I did get quite a few, and so that directly impacted my end products. In terms of...
Well, how would this compare to if you were doing it, say, 15 years ago, before all these technologies existed?
15 years ago, I would have had to have trawled through, the music channels, which were very sparse. You'd have MTV and MTV. I'd have to go out and see how bands were marketed, as in point of sales in record shops and point of sales in shops like Woolworths and other kind of big brand...
Which, of course, doesn't exist.
Which doesn't exist anymore. HMV still exists. You've really that out of the loop.
Has it come back? Made a comeback?
It made a comeback literally 2 weeks later.
Well,
it shut down half of its shops, but
that
it's
just
fine.
shows you that the point that you were making has been made. On to construction. What would you say were the most useful technologies in construction?
I used an Olympus 100 camera to film it. It's nice and lightweight. It meant that I could get the shots in Paris and Edinburgh very easily, as in it was very easily concealed. I could take it out and shoot things very easily. So, for example, all the shots at Sacré-Cœur were all very easy to get, as in I could just move across. I used the panorama view at one point. I used the auto functions on the camera. But for post-production, the most important thing I used was Final Cut Pro 10, which has lots of different tools, but the most important one I used was the color correction tool, which is how I achieved the Super 8 camera effect to evoke feelings of nostalgia in the audience. That was going on to color correction and literally just changing the hue and the contrast in each shot until it looked like a Super 8 camera. In terms of the Digipack and Advert, and even website to some extent, the two useful products were Photoshop and InDesign, which isn't used that much. Photoshop and InDesign are both created by Adobe, and they're both Creative Elements, part of the Creative Suite. Photoshop is more basic, but is used to just edit pictures. InDesign is more used for designing posters, making art prints, so it's the fine-tuned versions of the Photoshop elements that would be used for designing a poster or designing an art print, and I used that to design the back cover, although not the front cover, as I did not need the advanced technologies in InDesign to create the front cover, as it's just a picture made into a square with text moving across the top.
And if you were doing this, again, like 15 years ago, you would have been using videotapes and...
I'd have been using much more primitive technologies. There wasn't Photoshop, there wasn't InDesign. I wouldn't be able to have a media interface in front of me on a computer like I have been privileged to do today.
Right now.
Another media technology which was absolutely vital was Tumblr. As in, I used Tumblr as a basis to create a band website, as it's got a very easily malleable website design creating center. It's easy, it's the customize button. You can custom HTML it, you can go through preset designs, and it means that you can make it a very personal feeling website, which is the feel that I was going for in terms of the band Melancholics Anonymous. It also means that it appears not only as a standalone website but as a social media feed. So if someone wanted to follow it, it would be very easy to get updates directly from the band, furthering the connection between the audience and the product.
And on to evaluation. Did you stop them?
In terms of evaluation, I used webcams which were built into a range of different computers as mine broke. A MacBook Pro, a MacBook normal, an ordinary Windows PC, it all got different webcam qualities, but it meant that it was very easy to interview people for the audience feedback, as I could put the webcam on the computer and have the list of questions there ready to ask. I also edited the audience feedback video using Final Cut Pro, which made it very easy to shorten about 40 minutes worth of interview material into a 5-minute video, where questions and answers appeared very fast, and so you could get all the information you needed without having to trawl through a unnecessarily long interview. And also when there was parts where it was very difficult to hear what an interviewee was saying, annotations come up on the screen, which is another useful feature of Final Cut Pro, is being able to use text over the top of shots.